Should be good.
I just put that in there because I just got done with that scene and I was pretty excited about it. So can I click it or do you have to do the clicking?
I have to do the clicking.
Okay, so yeah, this is the Northwestern. And that's my model, that's my focus. So got a cut and fills there. Next picture. Okay, this is Forest Junction. And of course, we were all looking for mills and elevators. And does this work when I go when I use my little arrow?
No.
It just works on mine. Well, anyway, so bottom left, that's the Forest Junction mill. And that lasted until just not too long ago. And then the bottom right is that same mill from the air. So Forest Junction was a nifty little place. The C&W went horizontally and by the mill, and the Milwaukee Road was off to the side in the picture. Well, you can see the Milwaukee Road in the top left picture. But that mill lasted until just a few years ago. Unfortunately, did I have the wherewithal to take a picture of it? No. But this was at a little restaurant that had a bunch of these photographs that people can come in there and look at. So, okay, next picture. This is the Vogel coal elevator. And it would handle 3 different kinds of coal. And the people from, this is Cleveland, and the Centerville Historical Society would commemorate, they were just full of information and they were more than willing to help me out with pictures and with information. So they said this elevator here on the right would handle 3 different kinds of coal. And that would, like in the, like on all, like in the middle and either side, but they would be 3 different grades of coal. The bottom picture shows the elevator with a boxcar that was loaded with coal in Sheboygan. Of course, it was coopered and came up just like it would grain, but in this case, coal. So, and excuse me, they would cooper this, and it was reported to me by several reliable sources that they would actually get cattle cars or livestock cars and board them up and then put coal inside those cars. When I was the question man editor for the Northwestern magazine, people would ask, well, how come there was coal dust in these cattle cars? And several people wrote in and said it was probably to help the cows with digestion, which I felt kind of like, come on, nice try. And there were a couple other shot, I don't know, but the coal would go up from Sheboygan up to Cleveland, and they would unload it with like these 3-wheel wheelbarrows. And the gentleman I interviewed, they just found that fascinating. And this all happened during their high school days, and they were thrilled to have somebody to tell it about, talk to it about. So Vogel coal. Next picture. This is the Dairy feed, obviously the depot, but this is the Cleveland depot and the Dairy feed mill. And then next to it, a little further on down, was a storage building that undoubtedly had salt and different kinds of materials that the farmers needed for their for whatever they did. This is like an agrarian city. Everything either, obviously came and went by rail, but it also had to do with farmers, you know, like with their uh, uh, lumber and coal and oil and whatever they would need for farming. Okay, next picture. Now here's a Deer's feed mill again. From the top left was after a building had burned down. I guess I could say luckily for me, because then I got a good clear shot of the west side of the mill to help model it. And then at the bottom right is, of course, the mock-up of the mill. You can see the pass-through, or like, what would that, I don't know what they would call it. It was like the trucks would drive through there and dump whatever they put in the mill. Thank you. And from the picture up on the top left, it looked like it was as much as I had my mock-up. And then later on, one of the gentlemen that was from the Centerville Historical said, no, it went the whole length. And it was the high school kids, when they first got their cars, thought it was pretty neat to take a running shot at that and see how far they could be in the air after they went through the you know, that little overhang. What would you call that thing? The overhang. That thing right there.
Yeah, I think we call it the alley.
The alley.
That's what we called it on the elevator there,
Yeah.
the alleyway.
But they take a run and start at it and see how far they could get in the air. So, but there were just some wonderful stories that came with this one and a bunch of other places, because the people that were sharing this from the Historical Society, they were just thrilled to have somebody to talk to about, you know, their memories of this, because it was a very, very, very nice little small town. Okay, next picture. Now here's my model. At this point, I'm almost done with it, but it's complete now and in place. You see that character down at the bottom right with that sack on there. I was told that Dick Deers, the guy that owned this thing, lived just like right across the street and had a farm there, and he would sweep up all what was the kind of the drop, you know, like all the feed that didn't get into the bin or wherever they put it, and he would sweep it up and put it in a sack and bring it home at lunchtime. Well, the farmers that came into town to buy stuff at the hardware store or here at the mill, they would be sitting in the tavern, the Grot Tavern, GROTT, and they would bet each other a beer to see how long they could get Dick to stand there with that 100-pound sack on his shoulder, which I thought made that whole thing very colorful. So, and you can see in the background there's the storage building. What would they keep in the storage building? Salt and what else? Anybody, any former farmers?
Well, you'd have all kinds of feed
And they would store it in there.
supplement,
Huh.
minerals and stuff like that for the cattle.
All right.
Oyster shell for the chickens.
Sir, oh yeah. Huh. Well, thanks. Okay, next picture. This is in Cato, which is about 5 miles west of Manitowoc, and that still stands there, remarkably enough. But I've only got like a couple inches on the outside of the main line where I could put this. So I'm just going to use a photograph of this and blow it up to HO scale and put it in place there. Along with this elevator, there was a cheese house and a coal pile to heat the cheese house or to supply energy of some kind for the cheese making. So there was like 3 spots at this one particular place, and I'm, you know, like for a modeler, this is gold. Okay, next picture. And here's that same mill again, and you can see that overhang where they would, drop the whatever product they can, like the different grains. And on the left is that cheese house, and in between them was a coal pile that came by rail. Then in the fall, I was told by the one of the older railroad guys I worked with in Green Bay that they would bring sugar beets here, and then they would hire a like couple of youngsters to take pitchforks and throw these sugar beets that were thrown on the ground and put them in any kind of car that would handle that and take it up to Green Bay to make sugar out of. In fact, they had up until recently, there was a track, excuse me, just kind of south and west of town, or south and east of town, called Sugar Factory Siding, which was where they would, the dispatcher would park trains before they could handle them in the Green Bay yards.
Say, Rich,
Go ahead.
this is Dave Nelson. I think
Hey,
I
Dave.
have a copy of the same slide. It's a Carl Blahnik slide, but
Yeah,
it's unlabeled. So you're saying this is Cato?
Cato,
Cato.
Cato.
Okay, Cato. Okay.
Yeah, I'm certain it's Cato. I couldn't tell you the date, but there you can see a Jeep over there parked.
Thanks.
That whole line was in bad shape for years and years, and it was not. They would go on out there and spend a lot of time just putting cars back on the track. So, okay, next picture. And here's a spout. This was right in Manitowoc, next to where the old depot was. Actually the third depot that the CNW had, and I was going to make something like that for my Cleveland Co-op elevator. Okay, next picture. Then somebody had mentioned silos that were made out of wood, and this is up in Door County. And I made this I just cut the silo out of a 2x4 and covered it with random pieces of 1x3 or 4 or 5, whatever. Was kind of, I wanted it kind of random so that it had that kind of random look. But this is, there was no railroad near here, but it just ached to be modeled. And took a long time to do that, but I think it was worth the effort. And notice the shed on the left of that. Anybody want to take a guess why those boards are on the window? All right. It was so that when the cows leaned against the window, they wouldn't break the window out. So, okay, next picture. This is near Cleveland, and these are migrant worker houses, and the people that would migrate through picking crops and working in the vegetable mill or the vegetable canning companies. They would stay here throughout the summer, and when the crops are all picked and canned, then they would be vacated. But this is so typical of Wisconsin, and there you are. Okay, next picture. This is one of my favorite shots. I just couldn't help but put that in here. This is out in Durango, 1963. My folks said I could go on this trip if I got the money, and my grandfather gave me what I didn't get. I was 15. I caddied every day I could, and yeah, what a memory that is. Okay, next. This is Cleveland from the air. And what also makes this interesting town to model is the fact that it was built on It started on Lake Michigan to the left there, top left. And everything that came and went from this area, whether it be, just like how building materials or farm equipment and things would come by wooden schooners. And they would tie their boats up on the lake, down what's called Centerville or Hanke Bay. And then after the railroad got there, the Milwaukee Lake Shore and Western in 1872, that was the end of the bulk of any kind of wooden sailing ships that came to Centerville. And then not too long ago, the railroad got pulled out of there and the transportation went to the highway, High 43, which is just kind of be to the right and below on this photograph. But you can see that the town of Cleveland was about a mile long, and the feed mill or the co-op I was talking about is, I can't point to it, but it's, there you go, right there, along with all the other accoutrements. Okay, next. Now here's the feed mill, or not the feed mill, I don't know what they put in it, but this is the co-op. And at the bottom left is like a big coal pile and not related, and that was like the Vogel's coal elevator. And then the next one with that kind of funny thing sticking out the back, that's a cheese house or cheese storage house and like a distributor. And that thing in the back there was like ammonia cooling pipes. And then they also had like a loading dock. And one of the old guys that I interviewed said that they typically, where they would get like two cars, excuse me, they would get two refrigerator cars that were iced in Manitowoc, and then they'd bring them down here. And honest to Pete, the guy knew the engine numbers off the consolidations that came there. He said, oh, they were Zulus, and they was whatever the number was. And I was just mystified. And interestingly enough, right after my interview with him, he passed away. But I think that's also typical of people that have memories of the 50s or the early 50s that I was looking for, or still look for. Here's the co-op, and you can see on the front, what would be the east side, was loading docks, and toward the back of it, let's see right there, there's a tank car, and with a penstock, and to the left is on the mill, or the co-op is like the hardware store. And you can see two little gas pumps right there. And then of course the bulk oil in the back left. Way up at the top are the migrant worker houses. So a lot of things, a lot of wonderful switching opportunities here to recreate that whole atmosphere. Okay, next one. Now, I modeled the thing, and I needed to, get the dimensions, and thank goodness I measured it up when I did, because shortly after that, they turned the thing into gravel. They ground it up. But the mill, or the co-op itself, was built in 1948, and the year after I was born. So I was a big brother, like the big brothers, little brothers, and I took my little brother out, who was like in junior high school. We counted all the little squares. This mill was, I don't know what you call it. It's like it was poured concrete, and it's not slip form, but there was they had like 2x3 pieces of plywood or wood that were fastened together somehow, and then they just poured the whole thing. But for me, it was great. I could just simply count, like however wide it was, and then multiply it by 2, and how tall it was and multiply it by 3, and all the dimensions were so convenient. So, and then the picture at the bottom was that cheese house, which that was a great opportunity. Okay, next. And of course, the co-op here, I wanted to make sure that the proportions were right, because I had another building, the Dare's Feed Mill, and I found, and I was given the dimensions of that thing, which made, if I had modeled it the way it was, it would have been the size of half of a ping pong table, which was more building than I wanted for the. I wanted to have a model railroad, not a building like that. But it fit very nicely, and there's a cheese house over here to the right. And 1948 is when that was built, and there was still running steam, so that the water tank or the water tower and the facilities over there were part of the whole thing. Next. And here the dimensions are. Boy, did that work out nicely. And then the windows, and tried different ways of doing this. My initial thought was to have this elevator made from, like cast it from, like styrene molds, and then pour the dental stone plaster in there. But it was just not satisfying. It was didn't work the way I wanted it. So I ended up just making the whole thing out of styrene, which I thought was worked out. It was a lot easier to do and manipulate. Next picture. And this is my styrene test piece, and I measured off 2 by 3 rectangles, and scribed the lines, the mold lines, and then because of the mold lines, when I scribed it, kind of stuck out too much, so I took a scale ruler, which had kind of a nice sharp edge, and just scraped it at an angle coming from the top to the bottom left, to knock off some of the just the stuff, like, I can't think of the term, like when you scrape it, when you, all the little the marks on there, so it was smoother. And then I painted it just to kind of try the different ways of approaching that. Okay, next picture. And here it's going together, and the styrene worked much better than when I was trying to cast it in dental stone, which would have been fun, but we had to get the show on the road, as they say. You can see the top right is the windows for the hardware part of the thing, and then like the big tower for the elevator. So, okay, next. Then I went to the local Ace Hardware, and I asked them if I could take a picture of their shelves to put inside the elevator, and they kind of gave me a kind of a mystified look, like, what in the world is this going to be? Because none of them were model railroaders and didn't speak that language. But when they kind of got over the mystery, they said, sure, go ahead. And it really worked out nice. Next picture. You could see the Ace Hardware shells inside there. Okay, next picture. Shows it from another angle. Now the windows were, let's see, they were clear styrene, and what I did was scribe the doors and the different parts where the metal that kind of held it together, and the metal strips were 1 by 3s painted silver and glued on there, and just to kind of show the different window panes. But I was going to do them separately, but it worked out much better to bend them and then glue the whole thing in and then put the roof on. Okay, next picture. And this is pretty much how it would have looked in the day, other except that there's no litter in here, but the water, the water tank and all, and the section houses and the pump house were, that's pretty much how it was back then. There was little post next to the hand car shed on the right, and there was another little post on the shed on the left. And the one on the right would have been 9, and the one on the left would have been 10, and that would have indicated the limits of the section, you know, where the maintenance people would have worked. So that was section 10 going north, section 9 going towards Sheboygan. So I had put an article, I had taken a picture of that tank and put it in the newspaper and asked if anybody had any information about that. And sure enough, there were a couple old guys that called up and said, oh yeah, we used to hang around there when we were kids, and the train crews would shoosh them out of there. And then as soon as they were gone, then they would come back. But they were also the people that kind of helped with different, you know, like the information, like the 9 and the 10, the section 10 and section 9. And there was like a one, I don't know, I think they call it like a one long pump to pump water into the tank. I don't know if that's the case or not. I'm not familiar with what they called it, but at any rate, that's kind of how the scene looked, minus the clutter and maybe some weathering. Next picture. So there's the fuel tanks. That's pretty much it. I mean, as far as this particular building. Then there's some refrigerator cars in the back that would have undoubtedly gone to the cheese storage place, or or out of various different things in Cleveland. Next picture. Well, here's that Vogel lumber. Okay, next picture. And then they had 2 different scale houses or offices. One was brick and one was wood. And so there you are. Next. And it's the model of the Vogel lumber, or Vogel coal and lumber in progress. Next. There's the barn with the original barn with the wood silo. Okay, next. And there it is again. Okay, next. Different angle of the elevator there in Cleveland, the co-op. Next. This isn't an elevator, but yet it was a place they stored just mountains and mountains of cheese. I got Don Manlick and I both got a tour of the inside there, and they had a display cheese, kind of a big wheel of cheese, and the thing, I swear, it was like about 4 or 5 feet across and about 3 feet, or no more than that. Thing was huge, and they would pick it up with a forklift and bring it to supermarkets. It's kind of a come on for buy cheese here. And you can see the guys up there on the top there putting ice inside the insulated box cars, and they would undoubtedly have cheese in there to be loaded and shipped out. When I interviewed the people that owned it, and they said that years ago they had a special storage room where ladies would bring their mink coats and store them in the summertime, which boy, things are sure different. But this is almost right downtown. Next picture. This is an elevator in DeKalb, Illinois. I worked for the C&W in the summertime when I was in college, and so I got called for the DeKalb switch engine, and boy, that was a lucky break. So, but in the back, you can see the elevator. Those two white things, I don't know if they're canisters of some kind, and then the lift house in the back. Okay, next. And this is a shot from another elevator, large building, and it was not like, well, they didn't have, I don't think it was from an airplane, but anyway, the reason I'm pointing this out is on the top left corner is an enormous elevator, as well as right there, yeah. And then there's a smaller one to the right of that. There you go. And that thing, I think in the 50s, mid 50s, burned down. And you could see that from Michigan, that fire, they just let her burn because there was no putting it out. So they just tried to douse the houses and the buildings that were on either side of it. But like I say, the fire people would tell me that, yeah, you could see that fire all the way in Michigan. So anybody from Michigan have any stories about that? Right by the elevator, like on the is a like the second C&W depot that was vacated right after the Second War because they put up a new one on the west side of town because they straightened out 1911. They straightened out the main line. So this originally you're looking at the main line through Manitowoc, and then they straightened it out. So for just convenience. And then the post office is in the back with all the box cars and the whatever cars they were loading. There's a couple of coaches there sitting. So, and then Lake Michigan in the way in the background, and of course, yeah, there you go. But that's the post office, and I think Walther's made a building like a store, like a building that was actually a ringer for the post office in Manitowoc. I suppose, that was like the standard design. So yeah, I was fortunate to get my good friend from church. His neighbor used to be the photographer in Manitowoc for years, and he had a whole collection of 4x5 negatives. And he went through there and pulled out all the really neat railroad negatives, and Larry Easton, help scan those things into something that was I could print from a digital print. But I just think this is the neatest picture this guy took. Next picture. This is in Forest City, Iowa. I went to school there, and of course the Edmund St. L. and amiable conductor. Unlike today, I think a lot of the rail train crews don't appreciate being photographed nowadays, I've found. Next picture. This is Manitowoc again, and the white building in the background is that elevator that burned. And this would have been the Edmund St. L. that came downtown and then back out to the main line and on to Kaukauna. Okay, next. This is my last slide, but this is another one of those nifty pictures I got from the newspaper photographer. You can see the elevator and the elevator on the right. There you go. Then adjacent to that is like a Sioux Line storage building, and then the water tank, the Sioux Line water tank, more in the foreground, along with obviously the turntable, and maybe another storage thing, and then sand. You can see the sand all over. And then in the bottom left is the idler flats for the car ferry, which would have been way to the left here. So,
Rich,
well, there you are. That's the last image, I think. Here, click it and see what happens. Yeah, that was the last one.
Rich, if you go back to that image, that you just showed, I think where the water tank is, and there's maybe a sanding shed or something, and then there's this building with an open side. I think that's the coaling where they use buckets.
Yeah, thank you. That's, I was gonna mention that, like a bucket coal thing, and they had those big, like 55-gallon drum they'd fill up with. Can you imagine working like that?
There was a great article in Model Railroader in the 1950s about how to build one. And the one in the article was from Waukesha, also on the Sioux line, and it looks just like this one.
There was one like that in western part of the state. It was Marshall. No, not Marshall. It was, I can't remember the name of the town, but it was like a joint, it was a joint facility with the Sioux line and the CNW. I'll think of it in a second. But yeah, boy, what a backbreaker. Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments? And this is part of the Sioux, oh, there you go. So,
Nice job, Rich.
thank
That
you.
was- That was fun.
Good, glad you liked it.
Good pictures.
Yeah, a lot of really nice models there.
Yeah, thank you.
So that barn that was sheathing over an original log barn, right?
Well, it was just what it was. It was like logs on the bottom and sheathing on the top,
Okay.
because that barn was kind of right around the corner from we have a cottage on Lake Michigan.
That's neat.
And I was flattered because my aunt was totally convinced that was the real thing, and she didn't know that the railroad came down to as far as our beach. I let it go. All right, thanks, Estelle. Didn't matter.
That's right.
So, well, there you are. Well, I'm
All
glad you
right.
like the pictures.
Yeah, it was great. Our schedule is going to get a little weird here for the next couple of months. Next week will be on Tuesday, and we'll go at 6 o'clock Central instead of 6:30, so a half hour early. And as of yet, we don't have a presenter, but we'll either get Clark on here, or we'll do another collection of industry photos like we did last week with Ron. If anybody's interested in presenting or putting any of that together, just let me know. And then let's see here. I have figured out the schedule. So yeah, so that'll be Tuesday, June 15th. And then the following week will be on Thursday again, but I'll just keep it simple. Next week, all you got to remember is Tuesday, 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock for you guys.
Right, 6 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Eastern. All right.
That'll
good.
work.
All right, great. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll see you
Have a
next
good
you.
weekend.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks,
Thanks,
Rich.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Rich.